So, how many of you guys have been at the Canon of St. Andrew when we read the life of St. Mary Beat? Two people. Really? I think you were there last year, but yeah, I think some of you. Good. So you got, so many of you know a little bit of St. Mary Beat, right? So I'll be a little bit brief, but I want to just kind of give her right. So this is her up here. We have an icon of her with all the different parts of the story of her life. Okay, so there's her getting a cloak from Zosima. There's her talking with Zosima, and the communion from him, and then her crossing Jordan just on her feet over the water, and her flying while praying, and then her dying, or St. Zosima's kind of buried here. So it's kind of fun actually. Icons can actually tell stories, help remind you of things. So Mary of Egypt was a woman that lived about 1,400 years ago in a place called Egypt. Anybody know where Egypt is? Oh, yeah, there you are. It's still a bit south of Israel. Yeah, there you are. Some of you guys have been there. That's awesome. But everything that we actually know about her, interestingly, is all written by a guy named Saint Sophronius, who was a bishop of Jerusalem in 630 AD. So this is actually pretty early as far as church things go. A lot of the writings that we have from the church are like 700, 500 AD. A lot of them are about this time, actually, the oldest ones that we have books of, kind of thing. And she's a very interesting saint. First of all, she's one of the few female saints that we actually celebrate in Lent, outside of the Theotokos, if you think about it. And she gets a whole Sunday dedicated to her, and a whole day, a whole service dedicated to her. It's kind of interesting. She seems to be a pretty big deal. So a bit of a background of her life. So Mary's a bit of a runaway. She runs away from home. So don't do that, please. I don't think you'll let that happen. She has a bit of a hard life. She ends up kind of having to do some weird things that are not great. And one day she's in Alexandria, which is a city just on the bay of the Mediterranean, right where the river, the Nile, comes out. And there's a ship going by, and they're all going to the Feast of the Holy Elevation of the Cross, which we did last Sunday. Remember, we processed around the cross? And she just decides on a whim to go. She's like, what? Sure, I'll jump onto a boat and I'll go to Israel, and I'll go to the Feast of the Cross. And she doesn't really do it for the best of reasons, but when she gets there, she tries to get into the church for the Feast of the Cross, and she can't. It doesn't really say whether like people are elbowing her, kind of thing, like she's running into people, or she's just running into air. But for whatever reason, no matter what she can, she can't get through the doorway. Now think of it, like there's thousands of people trying to get into this church, kind of thing. So at first she thinks, oh, this is nothing, just let me push harder. And then at some point she realizes that she's just not allowed in. And so she kind of gets pushed off to the side. And you know how a lot of churches, our church doesn't really have this, have like a little back entrance in the back? It's called a narthex or a porch kind of thing. If you go to other countries, you'll often see that they actually have like a porch that's outside kind of thing, that's a little covered. And just outside of there, she was pushed to the side of the door. There's an icon of the Theotokos. And so she starts praying to the Theotokos and decides that she's going to change her life, and she gets to go in to see the Feast of the Cross. And then she gets some bread, somebody gives her some coins, and she goes to the Jordan, gets kind of rebaptizes herself in a way, and has communion, and she goes out into the desert for 47 years until she meets another person. 47 years. So she's like a young woman, maybe this age of Anna Maria, and then by the time that she had said she's maybe the age of like Lee in our church. Okay, I think she's a very old woman. Okay. Now, we wouldn't know anything about her unless she met somebody in the desert. Does anybody know the person that she met? I actually said his name a few times now. You forgot?
It was a priest.
Yeah, Zosima, which kind of means lover of life. And he's a monk, And it's interesting. He's a really holy monk, and God kind of sends him to another monastery, to this monastery in the desert, just outside of the on the Jordanian desert, to kind of meet her. It's kind of his purpose in life. And so they meet. She tells her story, and then for a final time, Zosima gives her communion, and she kind of crosses the river to do this, and then he comes back the next year and she's dead. And she had died that day that she had communion. And so he buries her, and there's a lion that buries her. Everybody seems to remember the lion for some reason. It's always like, whoa, there's a lion? That's cool. Yeah, see, I tell you. It's like, oh, there was a lion with her. There you are. Okay. So the lion, instead of eating Zosima, helps bury her. So it shows that kind of like God is helping her.
Because Zosima couldn't dig.
Yeah, he was old man. The ground was hard. He was an old, and so God sent the lion to help. Okay, so there's kind of two things I want you guys to take from this story that I think are really interesting that we kind of learned from the gospel today. Were people listening to the gospel?
Yeah.
Okay, there, good. So, first of all, have you guys ever had something you wanted to change about yourself, but you just weren't very good at doing it? Yeah. You're like, oh, I'd really love to change this. Doesn't seem to work, right? And it's hard, you try, you fail, you can't seem to do it right even if you really want to. I want to tell you a secret. That for God seems to like to help us change ourselves. But he does it in weird ways that are not the ways that we think. We sometimes think, I'll just pray to God until I'll get this light come down on me and I'll be like holy, and I'll just stop doing whatever it was that I hated myself doing, right? But it doesn't really work that way. Instead, he seems to send people into our life that kind of help heal us. So sometimes they're a sibling, sometimes a parent, sometimes a friend, and sometimes they're a stranger, like Mary meets Zosima. And sometimes these people help us by actually, saying something to us. Sometimes they help us because they actually need help and we help them. And sometimes they help us by just being that person that makes us angry, and then we learn not to be angry at them, and they do it. There's sometimes it's just by learning. Sometimes he sends difficult people that kind of help us, right? There's many different ways of people that help us. But often it's people that kind of help heal you, help, be a nice person to you. I think you guys probably can all think of somebody in your life that you really like, that helps you be the best person you can be. And so Zosima and Mary, they actually have needed each other for their healing. They've waited their entire life. Zosima's an 80-year-old old man. Mary's 70 years old. They're pretty old people. And they've waited their entire life for meeting each other to finally get their healing. And so Mary needs a person, particularly a man, because she's had bad relationships with men. Probably she had some weird things with her parents, a tough life. It's hard to know exactly what, but she needs a man to be able to see her for who she is, not for what she has, and to respect her, to kind of see her as a mother, as a person that as a friend, as someone that's of value for who she is, instead of what she is. And so, because of all these choices of life, she's had people that have used her, and she needs someone that needs her, that comes to her for gain, that doesn't try to use her or abuse her. Zosima, on the other hand, he's kind of not the most humble person. He actually thinks he's the best monk in the world. And he says, God, can you send me a person to teach me something? Because nobody seems to be able to teach me anything. I seem to be the best monk. So God sends to him, back in those times, men were like, oh, women are weaker. They're not as strong as men. And so he kind of gets sent a woman who he would, in his mind, and the people around him would be like, oh, women are not as strong as men, kind of thing. So he gets sent a woman to teach him, someone that's holier than him. And he gets taught by a lady that's not that holy, or wasn't a very holy person originally, that didn't spend years learning under monks or anything like that, and gets to see that despite everything that he's done his entire life, he's followed all the rules, he's gone to all the services, he's tried to do every possible thing that people had said. He finds out that there are people that are greater than him because they come from the lowest point, and that they are repentant, and that they can be even more powerful than anything that he has. Mary has not even ever read the Bible fully, and yet she seems to know Bible verses and quote it to him. So he sees that somebody that doesn't even try to learn actually is better than him, and can teach him something. And so they it's interesting. It takes them 47 years. Sometimes it takes longer than you think. Sometimes you think that it's going to happen right away, and then it doesn't happen right away, right? Okay. The second thing, and this is from the gospel, is that there are many times that you want to be the boss, be the leader of the group, right? Make people listen to you. Have you ever had that where you're like, hey, I want everybody to kind of follow me and do what I want? Maybe? Okay. Has anybody thought of being the president or of the world, or the prime minister or anything like that? No? What? Okay. Okay, the principal of the school?
No.
No. Okay.
Take over the school.
Take over the school. There we are. To be the head student, at least. Okay, there we are. Yeah, the head of the house. Okay. So, the key here that we hear in the gospel today, we hear James and John, sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder, which I think is a cool name. They go to Christ and say, hey, can we be your right hand and left hand man? Meaning like you're like second in command. You're like your people that are like the person that everybody goes to ask, kind of thing. Can we become the leaders of all the people, kind of thing? And Christ kind of says to them, look, if you want to do this, it's actually not for me. It's for the people that have got it prepared. And second of all, if you want to be a leader, this is the whole wrong way of doing it. You don't try to be a leader. You try to serve. And so we hear that people will listen to you, if you have things that they need. If they trust you, that's when you'll become a leader. So there's two kind of ways of becoming a leader. You can become holy. You can become as good as you want. You can think of a football, soccer team. The head captain is usually the best player. Sometimes, most of the times, they're the best player. And people are like, wow, I just want to learn from you, right? Or the person that, the head scientist is just one of the best scientists, right? Kind of thing. That's one way. And so we hear here about Mary of Egypt, who becomes the most holiest person. And through that, everybody wants to be an example of her. We're still listening to her story 1,400 years later, and we're like, wow, I wish I could be like her. Because she shows us the best way of becoming holy, right? And changing our life. She goes from really bad life to a really holy life. And so if you want to be good at something, people will respect you and follow you. And if you want people to look at you for advice, become holy. That's one of the ways. So if you want to be a leader, if people see that you are really a person that is worthy of following, then you'll be a leader. The next one that we hear about is in this gospel, is about serving others. Remember I said how to serve others. So that captain of the football team isn't always the best player. Sometimes they're the person that helps the other players the most. And so actually that's very common, that the star of the team is not the person who's the captain of the team. They're actually the people who help everybody else, who kind of make sure that everybody gets what they need. Yeah.
Encourage them.
Encourages them. Yeah, exactly. And so that becomes it's what's called a servant leader. If people feel you really care about them, if they feel that you know what they want. So let's say like you guys are all deciding, okay, we can go for pizza. Which pizza place should we go for? If you could just like all yell it out. But if somebody was like, I've listened to all of you, and I think that 3 of you want to go to Pizza, and 2 of you want to go to Pizziola, kind of thing. And I think that, and then 2 of you guys want to go to the blah blah pizza. I think blah 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 pizza is actually better. I think that the people that like Pizza and the Pizziola will really like this one much better because, you know what, I know that you guys went there last time and you liked it. So people will hear that you were like listening to them and that you knew what they wanted and you cared about them. And so if you say that, I think that you might get a lot faster of people going, oh, we should maybe let's go do that. Instead of if you're just yelling, no, I want to go to Pizziola, or I want to go to Pizza. You're just kind of, everybody's yelling at each other, right? How do you decide, right? You have to have somebody that you trust. I'm sorry? A vote, yeah. And, you know, if people know that you're going to always choose what's the best for the group. Okay, there's 3 people that want to go to Pizza, and that's the majority. And even though I hate that place, I'm going to say, let's go for it. Then if you say, you know what, guys, let's go to Pizza, people will go, you know what, I trust, I trust Nathan here. He seems to not be wanting to do what himself. Sure, fine, we'll just do it. That makes sense. Let's just go for it, because we know that he's not just saying it because he wants to, right? And so Mary Nietzsche and Zosima are actually kind of an example of this. We tell their story every year because they're really holy, but they're also people that wanted to serve each other, that they didn't try to do something for themselves. They weren't trying to be that, and because of that, they kind of become a leader in our church. They kind of become the example that we're trying to follow, right? Their story is a way to inspire us. So I want to encourage you guys. You're actually all called to be saints. So, who thinks they will be a saint? Who will get an icon? Yeah, Moses. Okay, Saint Moses, Saint Nathan. Cool. Saint Azariah. Okay, we got 3. Yeah. So yeah. So God has called you guys to be a healing presence among your friends, to change their lives by witnessing the love of God, to be really holy, to be people that like people go and like, wow, there's something different about people here, this person, and to witness to God, and that means basically becoming a saint. Each of you can get an icon. So, and you know, take heart. Mary of Egypt was able to do this. We have an icon of her. We spent a whole bunch of days dedicated to her. And she was a person that ran away from home. She didn't really listen. She had not a great life. And yet she still became really holy. And people could do that. So maybe the next time that somebody says, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Can I suggest an answer?
Yes. A saint.
An icon or a saint? I like that. Now they'll go a little bit weird at you. They'll be like, no, I meant what do you want to work at when you grow up? And they'd be like, well, you know, I don't know. I just want to be a saint.
Wait, there's already a Saint Moses and an icon. Doesn't that make me a clone?
Kind of. Well, you've got a patron. You have a Saint Moses that you can emulate your life off of. But you get to do it your own way. You know what? There is like 25 Saint Michaels. And one of them basically carried a dead dog around for 5 years of his life. And then there's one is an angel. So there's very different ways of living your life as sainthood. Okay. Now the person who did the dead dog, he was able to tell people what they needed to change in their life. As he was walking around, someone would come up to him and be like, you, stop stealing bread from the baker. You know, quit telling your wife that you're going out to the field when you're actually just going to sleep. Whatever. Yeah, he was able to do that, and that's what made him a saint. It was because God kind of did that. It wasn't that he was carrying around the dead dog. But I'm just saying that there's many different ways of doing it. There is multiple Saint Moses. There's Saint Moses of the Egyptian, who is a thief, a robber that became a really holy person. And then there's Saint Moses of Egypt, who leads his people out and gets the law and gets to see God face to face. So there's many ways of being saints, right? It's all very different ways. You know, there's multiple Saint Azarias. There's multiple Saint Martins. There's another Saint Azarias. Yeah. In Persia. There's 3 Saint Nathans. I'm just using. I don't know about Clarence if there's more saints. Okay. Fotini, there we are. Okay, there is multiple things of Fotini, so there you are. So each of you guys have multiple examples that you get to follow, and you get to be your own story. Maybe you get to be Saint Clara, the dishwasher, or Saint Clara, the scientist. Right? I'm just picking on random people here, but you get the point, right? There's multiple ways you get to be a saint, right? And follow your life. So, yeah. Anyways. But remember, you do it by helping other people heal, becoming holy yourself, and becoming a person that serves other people. Right?
Trying to be a plunger guy. Does that make you a saint?
I think think that makes you a plot of a movie, but but maybe a saint too. Anyways, we'll end with that point. Guys, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, one God. Amen.